AI for learning. You've heard all the hype, you've heard all the blather. Now here's how you actually do it. A real-life AI project showing eye-watering time savings and efficiency gains. It's real, people. Here's where the AI rubber hits the road. Welcome to The Learning Hack, a podcast about the people and technologies that are creating the future of learning. I'm John Helmer.
Now guess what?
Learning is cool. Learning is cool. Learning is cool. I'm learning.
Learning is fun.
And knowledge is power.
Knowledge. Education.
Maybe I've got a low boredom threshold or something, but it feels less and less interesting to me to be told how much AI is going to change learning. Okay, I get it, but 2 years have passed since ChatGPT burst onto the scene. We want a bit more than use cases now. We want action. Real projects, documented case studies with real results. Too much to ask for? No. Earlier this year, I saw it. AI learning in action. The young team I'm interviewing today from Expertise Learning, based in the Netherlands, are going to talk us through a project for a healthcare client that delivered amazing results. Kate Fitzgerald, head of FACT. Who was on that team?
Hack Facts.
Saskia Huusen is a customer success manager at Expertise, with expertise in the 5 moments of need methodology. She holds a degree in organisational science and has extensive experience working with major clients such as Janssen Pharmaceuticals and the Dutch National Police. Her focus is on integrating performance support into workflows to improve business outcomes. Sanne Mateman is a consultant at Expertise, specialising in workflow learning. She has a strong background in implementing the 5 moments of need methodology, supporting clients in sectors such as healthcare and government. Sanne focuses on workplace learning strategies that enhance employee performance. Callum Clark is a learning strategist with a background in designing and implementing workplace learning programs. He is known for aligning learning initiatives with organisational goals, driving measurable improvements in employee performance across diverse industries. Callum is also a Taekwondo black belt.
When I saw their presentation at the Performance Journey Goes Dutch conference back in June, it knocked my socks off. I hope you're going to have the same reaction. So here it is, my conversation with Saskia, Sanne and Callum. So hi, it's great to have you on the podcast, all 3 of you. Welcome to The Learning Hack.
Thank you so much. It's great being
It's an honor
here.
to be here, John.
So we're going to learn today about a really interesting and innovative AI for learning project, an actual real-life implementation, rather than usual kind of futuristic blather, in the area of healthcare. First, can we get a bit of background? Who is it for? Who's the client, in other words? Who are the learners? And what was the problem or learning need it set out to address? And I kind of come to Saskia first to answer that one.
Yeah, sure. So we are here with Expertise. Sanne and I are working for Expertise, and we're here with Callum. And Expertise is an organization that's helping others with implementing strategies focusing on workflow learning solutions. We're based in the Netherlands, and we've been working together with one of our clients, the Alrijne Healthcare Group. We've been working about 7 years to implement workflow learning in their hospital. And they are a hospital with a little over 4,000 employees. And our partnership is very interesting because we dare to be innovative and actually make the shift to workflow learning. So we also discussed how we can leverage AI to optimize our workflow learning solutions and creating them. And that's why we not only wanted to talk about it, what it can do for us and what the potential benefits for AI are for us, but to actually experiment with it and put it into practice. So we chose a designated case together with the client to experiment in the hospital with one of the cases and actually apply our methodology to create workflow learning solutions and combine that with AI. And we chose the case for surgical assistants to do so.
So what do surgical assistants do?
So they actually assist during surgeries.
Okay, so they hand the swabs and the scalpels.
Operational assistants, surgical assistants. Yeah, exactly. They hand the stuff, they prepare the operation rooms, etc.
Okay. And so it was performance support for them. So like before going into an operation, or
yeah, but also during the operation and
during
what they
the
do
operation.
afterwards. Yeah.
So what they can look up what they're supposed to do.
Exactly, especially when preparing, but also sometimes during an operation, they have a little time to look up what they need to do in this specific situation.
Yeah.
So we do that for multiple roles within the hospital, also within other contexts. And then we rely quite a lot on the inputs from the assistants themselves, or the role that's our audience at that moment. And we thought that could be a lot more efficient and potentially also with higher quality, our outputs on that performance support solution. So we partnered up with Callum, because we are experts in workplace learning solutions, but not that much in AI, to see and to bring to practice what we can do here and how we can leverage AI to optimize our process.
Okay, so could you tell us a bit more about the team, the three of you? Introduce yourselves maybe, and how did that team form? How did you get together? And which of you does what? If you want to kick off, Saskia.
Yeah, sure. So this, I think the most interesting part is that we're here with three parties that all had their own role. And of course, the client has the main role here as a healthcare organization. We had someone from the academy there, but also the people from the business, from the surgical assistants who joined in the project. Then we have on our side, myself, I work for Expertise. And in this project, I had a role on maintaining our methodology, our principles, the way we work and how we create workplace learning solutions to represent the client's perspective and ensure that we're aligned with our values and with our expectations throughout the whole process. So we are not the AI experts, but we're the experts in workflow learning and combine that together.
And Sanne, what did you do?
I also work for Expertise, and my role in the project was really bringing our use cases from the hospital together with all the AI opportunities. So what I did at first was I took a deep dive in how AI is created, what kind of aspects do you need to develop an AI, so I could understand how it works, and I could get a little bit on the same level with Callum, and if he would explain something about how it works, I could really understand how and why it works that way. So after we came in contact with Callum, I really tried to make a bridge between AI and our use cases.
So you're kind of like the glue between the performance support methodology part of this and the AI part as represented by Callum for the technical side. So Callum, do you want to talk about your role a bit?
Yeah, so my role, I was the technical lead of the project and the AI expert, having a background in applying AI in the sort of learning world. So going into performance support is really interesting because it comes under this category. So my role was really making sure that we could, one, make sure that the language models and the different AI features we're building were actually possible. It's quite hard at the moment with these large language models to really say, oh, this thing can do that task. You have to sort of dance on the edge of these models to try and really validate whether or not it's sufficient enough for your task. So my job was really trying to pull out the expertises and these guys' processes and sort of frameworks about how to build performance support solutions and really embed them in the AI models. So there was lots of iterations back and forth between trying to, essentially extract the processes these guys would do and see if it's possible with the AI, and if so, build out features around it.
So you don't work for Expertise, but for Wildfire.
Yes. Sorry, I should have mentioned. Yeah. So I'm external, and we've come in to help these guys with the actual AI side of this.
Yes, and there's an Eminence Grise behind this, who is the CEO of Wildfire and also my podcast partner and your father. And I'm not going to call you an EPO baby because you're also an award-winning Taekwondo expert, and you'll kick my butt next time I see you.
Yeah, exactly.
You're deeply steeped in AI. You know, great heritage there, and also you've studied it very deeply yourself. I know. Can you tell us what part AI played in this project specifically?
Yeah, so what's interesting about using these large language models is you can think of these as like engines for different software applications. And these are sort of a piece of intelligence that sits behind them that we use for tasks that are non-deterministic. So for example, extracting the right information out of things. To do this without large language models is a very, very hard task. It would require huge teams, large amounts of data. The AI here really allows us to go in and probe documents to extract and mine out the most important and salient information to whatever task we're trying to use that information as context for. So you can think of the AI as, I'm trying to think of an analogy for it here, but yeah, it's an engine. It's the thing, all of the complex reasoning tasks happen within the AI, and we built a piece of software around that for interacting with these models. And you can, in fact, just to add one more thing to that while it's in my head, you can think of this as the AI is like, we have embedded the frameworks of expertise and their years of performance support consultancy, their processes into the AI. So that's where the actual sort of business logic is happening, is within the model and the prompts that we send there. They've been fully constructed and iterated to be as close to expertise's internal processes as possible.
Yeah. So to talk a bit more about what could be done with AI here that couldn't be done by traditional means, can we just kind of think about how this would be done in a traditional performance support setup? Because I mean, it's interesting from the point of view, this project is already quite innovative in that it is not a kind of, it's not a piece of e-learning on a PowerPoint, which has been made up from a PowerPoint kind of click next stuff. It's actually done through performance support. But if you were doing it in a world of performance support without AI, as opposed to how it was actually done, what is the difference there in how the AI functions?
Yeah, of course. So in typical projects, what we do without AI as well is that we start with a cognitive task analysis to really map the workflow of, in this case, the surgical assistants. And that's what we actually did here as well. So we first did it in a manual manner where we sat down together with SMEs doing these complex cognitive task analysis sessions and relying quite intensely on their inputs. And what we do then is identify critical tasks, and we create a blueprint for this workplace learning solution. And yeah, you can imagine that happens in quite some sessions where we rely on the inputs from SMEs, and we thought that could be better. So what we did now is automate a lot of that mapping, and based on validated documents, we add documents to the AI tool that we created, and then it generates those task analyses and links it to relevant knowledge. And that's a shift, or that's something that we usually do in sessions or as learning and development professionals ourselves. And now the AI really helps us to do that better and with higher quality. And we can dive into that in a little bit too of what the results were. But the biggest shift is that we usually start with SME input to do all these analyses and to create content. And now we add our documents that are already existing, like job descriptions and work instructions. And based on that, we let the AI mimic the process that we usually do as consultants and as learning and development professionals.
Okay, so it's not just a case of speeding up a traditional workflow, or, when I say traditional, I mean a non-AI workflow. It's actually doing things that, you wouldn't normally expect any type of machine to do.
Exactly. It's much more complex than, for example, using an AI chatbot like ChatGPT. We really integrate our workflow learning principles and the way how we process from a question and doing a thorough question analysis until getting the content and the blueprint for a performance support solution, including a plan for how what tasks are taught in a performance support solution and where you need formal learning to make sure that critical knowledge and skills are also covered in that solution. So those types of reasoning AI really helps us to do so based on our principles like 5 moments of need, but also like other formal learning principles.
we talk a bit about the project setup? In what way is the workflow different from an AI project than it would be from normally? And how did you go about setting this up? I mean, presumably, if I think of this, if it was done all through humans, you'd have a Gantt chart and it would have certain kind of dependencies and time durations in it. I'd imagine it's completely different from this, isn't it?
Yeah, if I could just jump in here. One thing that I think is fundamentally different about building AI projects compared to traditional software development or any other service you're providing is that fundamentally, because we're using models that are at the sort of frontier, a lot of people call them frontier models. They're kind of at the apex of what is currently capable by AI models. All of these projects are fundamentally start as a research project. This isn't like traditional software where you go, oh, these are the things that we're going to replicate. We know this is going to take this long, put it in a Gantt chart, engineers go off and build it, and you know it's going to work. There is this step where you have to go, right, this is the feature we want. Are the models actually capable of this first? That's the research phase. You have to go in, you have to play about, you have to tweak your prompts, you have to really find, is this, one, is it doing it? And two, is it doing it off a level that is either equal to or superior to a human doing it? So each of these features have this sort of a day or two of really going deep on the research to see, is this feasible? And then once we know it is feasible, then we can go and implement it like a traditional feature in a software product. So which is one of the big differences in terms of like building these would be that there's research involved in this. And is it actually capable? That's just from the AI's point there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so sort of from your point of view of doing a project, how is it different?
Yeah, just like Saskia said, we used to plan a lot of sessions with our SMEs, and they would go about and tell us about how their work is done, how their daily workflow is. And instead of doing all those sessions beforehand, we start now by collecting documents that contain the workflow, just like Saskia said. And then we go with a complete set of tasks and processes to the SMEs, and we start to validate all the outputs the AI has given. So they don't have to make up everything from a blank sheet, but they can start validating from their validated organization documents if it truly represents their workflow. And then we add things that weren't in the documents, but are part of their workflow. We change or add in details or put in little nuances to really adapt it to their day and their context. So that's a big difference there. Also, because we start with collecting documents, we also don't need that much time to gather related resources afterwards, because we've got that in scope for the most part already. So that takes up less time. So in overall, it's less time consuming for the SMEs. We don't give them that much work pressure by creating the workflow learning, because we do a lot of that for them, and then we start to validate with them.
Yeah, so in terms of time, it seems to work completely differently. But from what Callum's saying, there's a certain amount of experimentation involved. Does that add time? So are you adding time, but also taking time away somewhere else? You could come out evens, or do you actually?
To be clear on that, the research stuff that happens right in the development phase. So actually, in terms of actually applying the software to a project, that's a little bit different. So once the research done and we know that it's capable, that's ticked off. So that's right. It's a one-off that. And then the good thing is we know that all these models going forwards are only getting better. So if a insufficient model or a model can do it currently, any of the better ones will do it better and going forward. So the research phase is kind of a one-shot and get it done, make sure it works, and then it can be used repeatedly in any projects that this is applied to.
Yeah. So it's like part of your discovery process, but you've got a very different type of discovery process.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's true that we're still we're also doing different pilots and gathering information about how our new workflow, our new work process is going. And we're taking all that feedback we are getting and all the conclusions we're getting about the validation sessions and using that to make our process even better.
The Learning Hack podcast is supported by Learning News, the learning sector's newswire. Rob and his team are good friends of the podcast, and we really value the help and advice we've had from them, and they do a great job. For the very latest news from around the learning sector, for interviews with learning leaders, the latest from learning sector vendors and features on workplace learning, go to learningnews.com. I can imagine people who, maybe are getting on a bit and have been learning designers all their life and are used to a certain kind of methodology, workflow and process, setting something up, will listen to this and think, oh God, where would I even begin? I mean, do you think it's quite a revolutionary way of going about setting up the project? Just to be perhaps slightly controversial, do you think it helps you were young? You're young.
I think it does. I think it helps because, as you say, the shift from a learning mindset to a performance mindset is one in itself. And we see that that takes a lot from organizations to make that shift. And I think it helps that we're all young and very open to, and I'm not saying that people who are a little bit older can't do that, because we see that a lot too. But having an open and innovative, maybe even an entrepreneurial mindset really helps to just do it, think about it, do it, adapt. And we really didn't know where this was going to end, and we still don't know. We're still learning as we're going, but being able to actually see the results of the investments and the time that we spend in it, and they are mind-blowing. Also from the business, we get such positive results and feedback. Yeah, and that gives so much energy to continue and to see where this is going and continuously adapt.
Yeah. And does it put kind of a lot of strain on traditional project management methodologies? I mean, it might seem a bit strange to talk about agile as a traditional project methodology, because some people are still getting their heads around it. But is even that sort of not perhaps sufficient for managing a project in this way?
I want to say that's absolutely true. I mean, we are used to doing a lot of projects. We do that all the time, all day. But projects with AI is a whole different level of working together. So I think it really helped that we were communicating a lot. We were with a small team. We had clear roles in this project and didn't get bothered by all the ifs and buts that are there and all the uncertainties that we're dealing with. So it definitely is a whole different level of project management, and scope creep is in the loop when you're talking about AI. So making very concrete what we're working at what point, and continuously doing iterations that really helps in these projects.
So can we get to the solution itself? Can you describe it and talk about its implementation?
Yeah. Well, we created a platform where we can add our target audience and we can add our project scope. And then we upload the documents that contain the workflow of the target audience we're dealing with. And then the AI will start gathering context, and by using our workflow and our experience that we put into that, it will create all our processes and our tasks. And then we can go on and create steps and detailed steps that make up a task, and fill that with additional information, which is information or knowledge you should know before performing a task. We developed a feature to do an impact analysis to really score the tests that are critical. And we can use that to make formal learning activities. So we can really use the formal learning to teach the audience to perform those critical tasks. So the AI runs all that for us, and then afterwards we have a download button, so we can extract all the output and we take that to our client, to our SMEs.
So how's the solution actually accessed by the surgical assistants in the course of their work, and when? How much do they do kind of before and during?
Yeah. So right now, this AI-driven solution is a tool that we use as expertise consultants. But the idea is that it will also help other learning and development professionals in other organizations to speed up this process of creating workplace learning solutions. And the idea is of our methodology in itself is that we provide the right amount of information at the right moment. And that's one of the key principles of us creating workplace learning solutions. We want to make sure that when you are at that operation room, preparing the room, or right after surgery, you want to know what you have to do at that moment, that you can look it up and get some right in time, just enough information that helps you to do your task at that point. And what we do now with the tool, so right now it's a content creation tool. So it's mainly for learning and development professionals themselves to actually build performance support. And within the Alrijne Hospital, they use Ask Delphi as a technology to make the content accessible. So we import the results from the tool into Ask Delphi and make it accessible for surgical operation assistants themselves, and they access it on their laptops in the operation room.
To put it on a really high level, you can think of this, the project we've worked on here is sort of the content extraction, analysis, and pre-processing phase for the tool that expertise has, Ask Delphi, as they mentioned, which is the actual delivery mechanism for performance support. So we're not building a delivery mechanism. Expertise already have a brilliant mechanism. We're building something that can extract the correct information to populate those systems. Okay. So we think of, if you can think of the phase we've worked on as, we have like sort of the document analysis, information extraction. We're trying to mine out the stuff about what processes are mentioned, what tasks need to be performed by this certain employee. And then from that, we analyze these things that have been extracted, doing our own automated task analysis. This is then builds all the content that gets put onto Ask Delphi that the nurses can then use to access. And I think one of the key things to mention here is that in that analysis stage, because at the beginning when you mentioned, oh, there's nurses during operation, that's scary. Remember, this is only generating additional information for the things that our impact analysis doesn't see as like catastrophic. So they're not going to, if someone's bleeding out through an artery, they're not going to their support tool going, oh, how do I stitch this up? That's a critical thing. They should have been trained on that. Exactly. Yeah. So no one needs to worry that their operating assistants are going, God, how do I do this operation? But it's the less important of the things that it wouldn't be worth training these people on. It would be a waste of their time and a waste of budget. It's the small things. Have you looked through this checklist properly? Have you set up this table correctly? These sort of things that aren't, they're not going to kill someone, but they are still very important to be able to do correctly. That's where our analysis phase comes in. So that's the stuff that gets uploaded into the tool that nurses can access. So yeah, just to be clear that we're pulling out the information for non-critical tasks. That's a really key thing here.
Yeah, and when we say non-critical, I think anyone who's been in an overcrowded A&E department, which I have recently this year, and sees the sort of things that happen when people are completely understaffed, everything's happening too quickly, and suddenly your PICC line comes out and you're bleeding all over the place. These are things because the proper procedure isn't necessarily being followed, and that's where things happen that, as you say, aren't necessarily critical, but put a lot of those together and you can really be in trouble. And, yeah. Okay, so that's really helped to give us all an idea, I think, of what the nitty-gritty of this implementation was about. In terms of reflecting on the project, what went right, what went less than right, perhaps? What did you learn from the process of doing this?
I think what's really interesting to mention is that we did this project manually first. So we did our usual workflow analysis. We did this together with the SME, and in parallel, we built, or actually afterwards, we built the AI tool. And that really helped us to mimic the process of what we are doing. So we could compare our human results with the AI results and show that to the people who were in as an SME and as a business expert in our sessions to see, hey, to what extent does this resonate with what we did before together? And
so if it's like a scientific research project, you've given yourself a control group. You've got a control there.
We had a baseline. Yeah. So we had a baseline of the project and then repeated it with AI because we didn't want to be biased by us thinking that it's good, but in practice it would have been different. And that also helped us to further mimic our process and see what nuances we had to do to make sure that we got the similar or actually better output than we would have done ourselves with the SMEs. These cognitive task analysis are such complex processes. I think Miriam Nelen mentioned it in one of your previous episodes. And AI can actually help to do that a lot more efficiently, but also with higher quality. So that's very interesting. We also shared that the outputs that we got by the AI tool with the people who were in the project, and their feedback was so positive that it confirmed that we were on the right track and the potential that it has.
So what did that comparison show up?
From the AI perspective, that comparison is really important because when you're building AI solutions, before this sort of world of large language models, OpenAI, GPT, metrics and benchmarks are a fundamental component of building and training machine learning systems. You don't know if your system is getting better unless you're reducing the error that it's doing in here. So for these more unexplored areas or areas that don't have huge training data sets of like lots of data to build and compare against, the best way to evaluate these is to be able to compare it to real life projects. So that was actually it set this project up for success. The fact that these guys already have a big list of projects that they've completed manually that we can then take the prototypes, run them through the same content and see how close it comes out to their actual their human outputs. And that was used as kind of the benchmark to ensure that we were improving our models and our prompts every time we did another iteration. So it was that I think was really key to the success of this project. Without that, you set yourself up for failure if you can't benchmark these things.
Absolutely. And so to put that in context, what's being compared and analysed here is the production process. But what about when the rubber hits the road and we get to that thorny question of, did people learn anything? Did the thing work? Do you have any data on that yet?
And I said, well, I'll jump in here. What was interesting in terms of did it work? That's something that we need to get from our clients at the hospital, and Sanne and Saskia can fill you in more on that. But what was, from my perspective, what was really interesting, because being an AI developer, I often don't actually get to interact with the end users, the clients who are doing this. And what was really cool was working with, these are middle-aged nurses working in the Dutch healthcare system and seeing these guys come back and go, wow, that's amazing. I wish that would have saved me so much more time over the last however many years they've worked. That was really, to me, a little bit of validation of this project. If the people who are using this, the ones who are in that context, who do on this stuff day to day, if it surprises and impresses them, that's like the gold standard for me. These guys know that domain. So it was that for me was sort of a big check mark.
And I think that there are two types of results. So on the one hand, we have the results in the content and workflow learning creation side. And I think that's what Callum is mentioning, that it turned out to save SMEs about 70% of their time investment, because we could do this in a lot less sessions with a lot less dependence on their inputs. We also reduced the timeline of our processes and our projects, because usually it takes a couple of months to get everyone together, work in several sessions, build the content, do the analysis. And now we could really speed up that process by saying, hey, here's a proposal, let's review it. And we're actually looking for ways and further developing to minimize the input of SMEs here to make it even less time intense for them. And especially, I think, in a hospital context, that's very relevant, right? The resources are scarce, nurses are scarce. So legitimizing spending their time, I think, is a really nice gain here. But also our own time as learning consultants or learning and development professionals, our time on creating content. And what we see at the other end of actually using the performance support is that it really saves nurses time to be trained, because we only train on the most critical parts that you need to need to know. So we leave out parts of the training that can also be taught on the workplace with your performance support. And we save time for people to search for information because they have multiple repositories to look for documents, to look for how-to information and steps. And then we really make that digestible and accessible at the workplace by using their context to provide the information.
So there's a number there that bears repeating, 70% saving in SME time. And people will know how expensive SME time is. And you look at that 70%, that ends up being a big number and a big saving. Can you give more of the overall sense of the results that you've got from this? Any other numbers around that?
Yeah, so we shortened the timeline by 40%. So creating the workplace learning solution just goes a lot faster than traditional methods because we rely on the AI-generated methods and then validate with SMEs. And as I just said, we're trying to figure out how we can even minimize the SME input because we see that the quality is better than what we would have done before and the inputs that we're getting from SMEs. And maybe, Callum, you can jump in here. What you see as SME inputs that are better or AI quality that's higher than SME inputs. If we put 5 SMEs in a room and ask them to map their workflow, we get 5 different answers. And with AI, we really rely on validated outcomes. And I think that's much more reliable there.
Yeah, at the moment, we use the SMEs to sort of be able to validate the outputs of these, but we're getting to an interesting sort of precipice in the AI world where these models are becoming so good at the stuff they've been trained on that actually even getting an SME to validate it is almost becoming a waste of time. It's because obviously in these critical tasks that we're working in here in surgery and hospitals for now, no, this stuff is validated by SMEs, absolutely. But in the future, it's getting to the point where actually why would you spend all that time having SMEs go through huge amounts of content at a huge price? SMEs aren't cheap. When the AI itself is already going towards, it's at a doctorate level in a lot of different subjects. When it gets better, why would you even go and spend the time doing that analysis? So it's an interesting one about validation of outputs there. For now and for critical domains, we validate this stuff. But in the future, I really think the AI is going to be good enough to do these validations itself.
That's an interesting point. And you're in an area here where there is a lot of, authoritative sources of information. There's a lot of information that is written down, is explicit, and has been kind of scientifically validated and so on. How transferable is this to other areas that perhaps, have a different character? I mean, could you only do it in somewhere like this where you had a lot of documents to draw on?
Well, it helps that you have a lot of documents and that tasks or how-to steps or job descriptions are described. I mean, if you don't have anything documented, then it gets harder to get outputs there. So Callum always challenged us by saying garbage in is garbage out. And I think that's maybe it's maybe a little bit harsh to say, but it is what it is when you're working with AI. But even a little bit more fuzzy documented materials help as well too as input. The models are so good at and are applying our principles in combination with those models that really helps to even detail out tasks from broader documents or a little bit fuzzy or unstructured documents or maybe just notes or informal materials as well. So we tried it in other contexts too, where even job descriptions or work instructions on several parts of a process combined help to map that overall picture. And we fill in the gaps with SMEs where they are needed. But it saves a lot of time instead of starting from scratch.
I think what's important isn't necessarily it's the fact that we have documents as the back end. What we don't want to be using is relying on these models as knowledge bases. GPT-4, Claude, these aren't things where you use them to get factual information out. You use them as an interface to factual information. And that's what the whole idea of the back end of this project is that we, at the moment, we take unstructured documents. And to me, an unstructured thing is something that's not computer readable. So a PDF to most people is structured, but to a computer, it's not. And language models are very good at turning unstructured data into structured data. So we use these. It could be we take their PDFs. It could be the transcription of an interview with SMEs. It could be several interviews. All of these are used then as a knowledge base for the model to access That's the really key point here. So we're not letting the model come up with what it thinks you do in surgery, because it probably doesn't know the exact things. But we have these proper, this is the process you go through. We put them documents in, and it allows the AI to access the correct information, which minimizes any of the problems of hallucinating wrong answers or coming up, or the model just making up what it thinks is correct.
I think that's such an interesting point, because to the extent I've worked with AI, I've used it, for instance, to kind of do product comparisons, and I found that it very credulously accepts marketing language, which most products are written in, and I feel terrible because I've been writing that stuff all my life, all my working life, and now it's coming back at me, and I'm saying, no, Perplexity, this is just marketing bullshit. Tell me the truth,
Yeah.
I suppose I've noticed the development, I think it's to do with RAG, that now you can, with something like Perplexity, trace the sources back and kind of, interrogate them a bit. So, I mean, that's a great point there, Callum. But perhaps you'd like to talk a bit more about how you see, because you've worked on a number of AI product projects in different sectors, a bit more about how you see the applicability of this, because I'm kind of asking, can you only do it in a medical context?
No,
I'd like to know all the other places people could.
One interesting thing about building it in especially not just in the medical domain, but in something as critical as surgical operations.
Yes,
if we can make it work there, if we can make it work here, and we are happy with the quality of the outputs on there, if it can work in the most the context that might have the biggest impact on someone's life, their surgery, it's going to be, it has a good chance that it will work better with less constrained environments, like any other just generic processes or such. So that's one of the things with AI, and as I mentioned, not being able to benchmark these things, is we have to try it in these domains. So it's hard for me to say, yeah, it'll work really well, but I'm confident that if it can work well in surgery, it can work well in less constrained environments as well, and less environments that have less knock-on effect if something goes wrong. So no, this is absolutely a part of the process, though, would be now testing it a lot more in a lot more domains to make sure it's generic enough that we can get high quality outputs while not locking ourselves into just making a solution for one sector.
It may be interesting to add that we are applying this methodology in our workplace learning solutions in several kinds of contexts. So the reasoning and the model that we created is the same. It does the same steps, similar analyses, and there are some tweaks that we can make for a specific sector or a specific level of criticality within that organization. But overall, it would mimic the process that we do as consultants or as learning and development professionals in several organizations creating workplace learning solutions. So, if we could do it in several contexts, AI could help us there in all of those processes.
Well, I can think of loads of contexts, like, for instance, engineering-based things, pharma,
production, organization,
oil and gas, maritime, engineering, building, and so on, and far beyond that as well. When I first saw this at the a conference organised by Expertise in the Netherlands, it sort of knocked my socks off, and drilling into it a bit further with you guys has knocked off the socks I put on since as well. So I think it's really fascinating and interesting. And you formed as a team to do this. What are you all going on to do next? What should we look to hear about in the future from you guys, individually and severally?
Well, if I may, I wanted to jump in and also give another example about the results. Because,
please do. Yeah.
The past year, I worked at the Alrijne Hospital at a manually workflow learning solution. And if we look at the time we spent there, it took 9 months to create the whole workflow learning input. And then when we started the AI project, one of the SMEs I worked with in that project heard about us testing the AI in the organization. And so she was like, well, I know another department where I would really like performance support, but it took so much time. But if we can use AI now, we would be very happy to try that. So I started the project with them, and we're now in the validation phase. And compared to the 9 months we took in the other project, we're estimated to go live at the end of this month or the beginning of next month. So it's we started the new project at the end of August. So it's like a time save with almost half a year.
Oh my God. Which is significant.
This is a big workflow solution, right? It's for recovery assistants, it's for recovery nurses, and we are creating a workflow solution for their full role, just like we did for the operational assistants. So you could imagine that it takes quite a lot of time and investment in resources in making all of their tasks, detailing that, making sure that we have learning materials for their full role, including onboarding, etc. So it's really nice that we can speed up that process so much.
Yeah, and the quality of the results were also mind-blowing. Also for them, all the feedback I got from them, just to paint you in an image, we have like 5 or 6 processes there. They almost all contain like 5 to 6 tasks, and we only had to edit 4 tasks in total, and the other ones we just had to change a few words, and so it was basically all correct following their work procedures. So it was really mind-blowing for me to create all this content using the AI, looking at all the details it got there, and then going to the SMEs, and especially the one that I already did a project with, and telling her, look at this amazing output we got. And she was so excited. And it's on one hand, it's already very exciting to create an AI tool and working with AI and seeing all the input and output it can create. But on the other hand, it's even more great to see the reactions of the people you work with. They get really mind blown. They were like, this only happens in movies, so why is it happening here? Where's the camera? So it was really great to see how you can affect someone's work by doing this.
Oh, that's great to hear. And Saskia, what are you going on to do next with Expertise? Will there be more AI projects in the future?
Yeah, so the model that we created now, we see a lot of potential in that and in applying it to other contexts. So what we're doing now is setting up several pilots to actually test the model in different other contexts. We now created a prototype, but we want to turn this into a full product so that not only we as expertise consultants can use it, but other learning professionals could do it as well. So, for example, the academy in the hospital could go take the tool and create their own workplace learning solutions with it. And I think that that's a great opportunity because it makes workplace learning much more scalable. You know, when we before had to take a lot of time and rely on resources from SMEs and our own resources to create a workplace learning solution, this just speeds up that process and makes it much more accessible. Also because it's a hard skill to create these solutions, do cognitive task analyses, etc. So we'll definitely, productize it and make it available in a broader sense and keep updating it and improving it based on the feedback that we get to mimic our process and our knowledge and our experience as expertise even more.
And Callum, you told me before we turned the tape on that you're planning on doing a bit of travelling, and having heard that, I feel like saying, no, don't, stay at home, do some more work.
And that's the fun of being able to work from a laptop, though, is I can travel and work, which is a perk of the job.
You digital nomad, you, yes.
Exactly. But yeah, no, so working on all sorts of projects. I'll be continuing work with Expertise. We're trying to turn this from, at the moment, this prototype phase into an actual, see where it is applicable as a product. Can we get product market fit and turn this into something that people can use? I wanted to add something on what Sanne mentioned of the time savings and quality. It's an anecdote, but not from this project. I saw a post it was one of the guys at the top of the engineering teams at Amazon. And over the last week, they've upgraded all of their backend from an old version of Java to a new one. And they did this using a very similar system where it's essentially code generation and using generative AI. And they found that from upgrading all the backend, essentially they saved 4,500 developer years years in time savings on that. And remember, these are Amazon developers. These guys aren't on 20 grand salaries. These are six-figure salaries. You're talking about $500 million almost in savings and just upgrading their back-end language framework. And off that, 79% of the code reviews that were pushed were accepted with zero human input. So that shows that the quality of these is, you get these huge gains as you scale them. So, okay, looking at one project is fine. But when you think of the hospital, if you think of, they have hundreds of different areas that they could be applying these things. And that's where these gains are just, it's almost crazy to think of the numbers that come with it. It's mind-blowing.
Yes, having been, as I say, in that overcrowded A&E space, I hope somebody in the British NHS is listening to this. Well, marvellous stuff, and we hope to see more in this line. And I think it gives us a great deal of optimism about something that seems to be elusive, which is technology actually giving us a productivity boost, which it hasn't for some while. I mean, it seems to have gone a bit flat on that, but here we're talking about potential productivity gains, which are really quite huge and very exciting. So as we all kind of up our learning about AI, and thinking of all the listeners to this podcast, who many of whom listen for that specific reason, what sources of knowledge and opinion on AI can you guys recommend? And I think people should listen to you because you know you're actually doing it and doing real projects, and there is so much sort of blather out there. You would know who's worth listening to and not. So who should people follow if they want to know more about AI and learning? And we'll take Ethan Mollick as read because everybody mentions him. But I'm interested in your other sources.
Yeah, Ethan Mollick is my hero in this domain. So as much as we put him in the red, he is the man to follow. When it comes to actual doing the research, getting gritty, really going, experimenting with this stuff and seeing if it works, Mollick's ahead of everyone in this. I think Karpathy from ex-OpenAI, Andre Karpathy was a phenomenal researcher in the AI world who's pivoted into learning, and he's just set up a lab called Eureka Labs, which is his way of what he thinks is how you can teach people better using AI. And he's probably from a technical standpoint, an interesting guy to follow. And then obviously I'd say Donald, because Donald has so much experience in this domain, but I can't be promoting Donald here.
I can promote Donald, I would really recommend Donald, definitely, especially as a non-technical person, a non-AI expert. I absolutely would recommend Donald, since he's just like Callum as well, on top of all the things that are going on with AI, and that may be one of the biggest challenges, to stay on top of everything that's going on, all updates that are being made, and Donald really helps to translate that to something that I understand as a non-technical person and brings it into the learning context. So I would definitely recommend him as well.
I think one thing that's worth thinking about here is not who can we recommend, but what to stay away from. This AI world is a bit of a brutal one, where there's a lot of people who've jumped on a bandwagon, and I'm not a gatekeeper. I want people to get involved in AI, but there's a lot of people out there making claims and posts and stuff when they fundamentally have no understanding of the technology that sits behind it, and that can be dangerous. It can be really dangerous if you bring someone into your organization to do this or to start an AI project on. So I would say, follow people who've done stuff in here. Ideas are easy. Implementation is hard, especially with this stuff. So I would say just look for people who are doing this stuff, who are building product. Their product is being used by people. That's the key thing here. Not just thinkers. Thinking is great, but doing is a different kettle of fish.
Yeah, and to completely be obvious in this, you could also follow us. I mean, we are doing it. We are developing everything, and we'd love to do more pilots and doing them in different sectors, and we'd love to chat about the challenges we're facing, the opportunities we're getting. So yeah, we're doing it.
And very successfully, and we will follow you because I think projects like this are so interesting to watch and really point a way towards the future. And thanks a lot for that. It was a great session, and thanks for giving your time so freely and helping me to understand it today. And good luck with whatever you're doing next.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jill.
That's all on the Learning Hack podcast for this time. Many thanks to our guest and to our sponsors.
The Learning Hack is among the top 5% most listened to podcasts globally, according to Listen Notes, we found out. But it depends for its existence solely on sponsorship and your Patreon contributions. If you want us to continue holding these excellent conversations about learning, it's you who said they're excellent, not us. Let's have a chat about your company sponsoring. Or sign up to patreon.com/learninghack, and for a piddlingly small amount of money, get transcripts, text summaries, and early access. Keep us alive. Until next time.
Stay curious, learning people.